Hannah Brooks had never believed in destiny, not until the night she held another woman's starving newborn against her chest and prayed, actually prayed, that her body, the same body that had betrayed her only months ago, would answer one desperate final call. It had been 5 months since she lost her own baby. 5 months since the hospital lights blurred behind her tears and the doctor whispered condolences she could barely hear. 5 months since milk had come in anyway, flooding her with a cruel reminder that her child would never drink a drop of it. She thought the milk would stop eventually, but grief has strange ways of lingering, and so did her body. When she took the cleaning job at the Carter estate in Brookline, Massachusetts, she told herself it was temporary. Just enough income to afford her tiny rented room above the hardware shop. Just enough distance from the past. But the Carter mansion, brimming with wealth, soft lights, marble floors, and whispered tension, seemed to pull her into its orbit with a force she couldn't name. And then came him, Samuel Sam Carter, 5 days old, barely breathing. His father, Daniel Carter, was a name that lived in business headlines. A man with sharp intelligence, a carefully controlled temper, and a reputation for dismantling corporate rivals like they were chess pieces he'd memorized from birth. But when it came to his newborn son, Daniel was helpless, haunted, broken. Sam had stopped eating on the second night. The doctors chalked it up to an infection, then acid reflux, then anxiety, and then nothing. No answers, no progress, no time. By the 5th night, Daniel hadn't slept in nearly 80 hours. Hannah found him in the dimly lit nursery, pacing with Sam cradled in his arms. The baby's cries were barely audible, thin, exhausted whimpers, like he didn't have the strength to cry anymore. "Mr. Carter, do you want me to call the doctor again?" Hannah whispered. "No," he said. His voice cracked on the single syllable. "They're out of explanations." Sam's skin was pale. His lips were dry. His breath came in tiny, fragile gasps. "Please," Daniel whispered, rocking him with trembling hands. "You have to eat. You have to." Hannah's heart split. She recognized the look in Daniel's eyes, the look of a parent who has run out of miracles. And then Sam opened his mouth weakly, rooting toward Hannah's shirt as she leaned closer to check his breathing. She froze. Daniel froze. For a moment, neither of them breathed. He's hungry," Hannah whispered. "No," Daniel said softly, as if denying the impossible. "He won't take anything." But Sam leaned again, searching, pleading, and deep inside her, Hannah felt a familiar ache, a fullness she had tried to ignore, her body reacting instinctively painfully to another child's cry. "I don't know why," Hannah whispered, her voice trembling, "but I still have milk." Daniel stared at her. Shock, desperation, shame, hope, all tangled in one storm. "I shouldn't even ask this," he said hoarsely. "I shouldn't put you in this position." "You're not," she whispered. "Sam is." When he finally nodded, it wasn't as a billionaire or a businessman. It was a father surrendering to love. Hannah sat on the velvet armchair in the corner of the nursery. Her hands shook as she lifted the baby and held him close. Daniel turned his back to give her privacy, his shoulders tight, his breath uneven. She loosened her shirt just enough, just barely, and brought Sam to her chest. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Sam latched, strong, desperate, hungry. Hannah gasped. Tears rose instantly, not from pain but from a grief she had buried under the weight of months. Sam drank furiously, his tiny hand gripping her shirt, his body relaxing against hers as if he had finally found the one place in the world where survival felt possible. "Oh my God," Daniel whispered, turning back. His eyes filled. "He's eating." Hannah nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Sam drank until he was full, until his breathing steadied, until he fell asleep in her arms with a soft, contented sigh. No one had heard from him before. The room fell into a silence that felt holy. Daniel watched them, watched his son rest against this woman who had come into his home, only to sweep floors and dust shelves, and something inside him shifted. Something heavy, something long buried. "Thank you," he whispered. But it wasn't gratitude. It was reverence. Before Hannah could answer, the bedroom door flew open. Victoria Hale, Daniel's wife, stood there in her silk robe, mascara smudged fury swirling in her eyes like a storm she'd been waiting to unleash. What she said slowly is going on in here. Daniel moved instinctively in front of Hannah. It's not what you think he said. No, Victoria hissed. Because it looks like the maid is breastfeeding my son in my home. Without my permission? She saved him, Daniel said sharply. Sam hasn't eaten in 5 days. Victoria's voice rose in a shrill, disbelieving cry. And you let her do this. You let some cleaning girl put her Victoria. Daniel snapped enough. Hannah clutched the sleeping infant tighter. Victoria stared at her, no glared like Hannah had committed a crime. This is not normal, Victoria spat. This is disgusting. It saved his life, Daniel said, stepping closer, his voice low and dangerous. Or do you prefer the alternative? Victoria's lips parted, but no words came, because the truth was undeniable. Their child was alive, because of this woman. This isn't over, Victoria whispered, not even close. When she slammed the door behind her, the baby startled slightly but did not wake. Daniel exhaled shakily. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Hannah didn't answer, because for the first time since losing her baby, her arms didn't feel empty, and she didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. Do you think Daniel was right to defend Hannah in that moment, yes or no? Hannah barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the weight of baby Sam's tiny fingers gripping her shirt, the warm heaviness of his body sinking into her chest as he finally drifted into peaceful sleep. She kept hearing Victoria's words, too sharp, venomous, echoing like glass breaking. But the image that stayed with her the most was the way Daniel had looked at her, not with pity, not with desperation, but with something far more complicated, something she wasn't ready to name. By morning, the entire atmosphere in the Carter estate felt different. The staff whispered the moment Hannah walked into the kitchen. They didn't ask what happened. They knew better than to get involved in anything that concerned Daniel and Victoria. But they stared at her with a mix of curiosity and sympathy. Hannah kept her eyes down, washed her hands, and began preparing breakfast like she always did. She had just set a tray of fruit on the counter when a familiar voice spoke behind her. Hannah. She froze for a second before turning. Daniel stood in the doorway in a crisp white shirt sleeves, pushed up eyes heavy from the night before. He looked powerful and exhausted at the same time, and somehow that combination made him more human than she had ever seen him. Good morning, Mr. Carter. You don't have to call me that, he said gently. Daniel is fine. Her stomach tightened a little. She didn't know why. I wanted to thank you again, he said, stepping closer. Sam slept almost the entire night. He hasn't done that once since he was born. That's wonderful, she whispered, smiling softly. I'm glad he's feeling better. Daniel hesitated, as if choosing his next words carefully. And Hannah, you didn't do anything wrong. She inhaled slowly, knowing that wasn't exactly true. Maybe morally, maybe instinctively, but not socially, not according to people like Victoria Hale. Victoria doesn't understand what you did, Daniel continued. I'm not sure she wants to. That's her child, Hannah whispered. She must have been shocked. No, Daniel said quietly. Shock is when you find something unexpected. Anger is when you've already made up your mind. Before Hannah could respond, Sam's soft cry drifted from upstairs. Daniel's gaze flicked upward. He's awake. Do you want me to? Only if you're comfortable, he said immediately. I won't ask you to do anything you don't want to, but he'll eat again if it's you. Hannah's heart squeezed. She wasn't sure if it was maternal instinct grief or something deeper she didn't dare explore, but she nodded. When she lifted Sam into her arms, he settled instantly, as if he remembered her heartbeat. By the time she sat on the armchair to feed him again, Daniel quietly turned his back, giving her privacy without leaving the room. It was such a small gesture, yet somehow it revealed more about him than all the articles she'd ever read. 10 minutes later, when Sam's eyelids fluttered shut, Daniel turned again, and his face softened. He trusts you, he said. He just needed comfort, security. From you, Daniel added. Only you. For the first time, Hannah couldn't deny the truth. Sam knew her, needed her, and every part of her needed him too, even if she wasn't ready to admit it out loud. But what she didn't know was that while they stood in that quiet, warm nursery, Victoria was already making phone calls. 3 of them. 1 to her mother, 1 to the family attorney, and one to the man she had been secretly involved with for nearly 2 years, Frederick Reed. By late afternoon, the entire mansion felt charged. Victoria swept through the halls with an energy that made every servant scatter out of her way. She didn't speak to Hannah directly, but when their eyes met in the foyer, Victoria's expression was so cold, so precise that Hannah felt the warning behind it. "You crossed a line, and I'm going to make you pay for it." Just after sunset, Daniel called for Hannah again, not to the nursery but to his study. She stepped inside nervously, unsure if she had done something wrong. Daniel looked up from behind the desk, rubbing his forehead, like he had been at war with his own thoughts. "Close the door, please." She did. "Hannah," he began carefully, "I spoke with Dr. Hill today. He wants you to keep feeding Sam if you're willing. He thinks it's the best chance for Sam to fully recover." She nodded slowly. "Of course. I'll help however I can." Daniel exhaled in relief, but his expression remained troubled. "There's something else," he said. "Victoria wants you removed from the house." Hannah froze. "She said you're a danger to the family image, a threat that you overstepped." Hannah swallowed hard. "I was only trying to help. I know that," he said firmly. "And I told her I'm not letting you go. Not after what you did for Sam." "Won't that make things worse?" she whispered. With Victoria, Daniel laughed bitterly. Everything makes things worse with her. There was bitterness in the laugh, and pain, but also finality, as if he had already crossed a line inside himself that could not be undone. Before Hannah could respond, the door to the study burst open. Victoria stormed in, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. "We need to talk," she told Daniel. "Alone." He didn't move. "Whatever you need to say, you can say it here." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Fine. I'll make it very simple. If she stays," she pointed at Hannah as if pointing at a stain, "I leave." Silence dropped like a stone. Daniel didn't blink. "Then you should pack lightly." Victoria's face twisted in disbelief. "You're choosing her, a maid, over your own wife." "I'm choosing the person who saved our son," he said quietly. "That shouldn't be hard to understand." Victoria trembled, not with hurt, but with outrage. "This isn't over," she whispered before leaving. "You're going to regret this." When the door slammed shut, Daniel finally looked back at Hannah. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't want you pulled into this." But the truth hung between them like a quiet, undeniable pulse. She already was, and deep down, Hannah knew this was only the beginning. As she walked back through the halls, Sam's soft breathing echoing in her memory, she felt something shifting inside her, something dangerous, something tender, something that scared her more than anything. Because for the first time since losing her own child, she felt like part of her heart was starting to beat again. Before she reached the staircase, she whispered to herself, "What am I getting into?" And she didn't know whether she hoped for an answer or feared one. Do you think Victoria had the right to demand Hannah be fired, yes or no? Over the next week, the Carter estate transformed into a quiet battlefield. Victoria moved out temporarily, claiming she needed space, though everyone in the house knew she was meeting daily with her attorney, her mother, and worst-kept secret of all, Frederick Reed. Daniel didn't bother hiding his contempt. He no longer cared about public image or polite silence. Every ounce of energy went to baby Sam and Hannah. Every day, Hannah fed Sam. Every day, Daniel watched, careful, respectful, always turning away to give her privacy, and every day something unspoken grew between them. Something neither of them dared to name out loud. But the peace didn't last. The explosion came on a Wednesday morning when the doorbell rang, and the housemaid scrambled in confusion. Hannah was in the nursery with Sam when she heard the sharp echoes of raised voices downstairs. Daniel's deep baritone cutting through someone else's sharper, angrier tone. She didn't need to guess who it was. Victoria, with Frederick. Hannah held Sam closer, her heart hammering as she stepped into the hallway, just in time to hear Victoria scream from below. "She manipulated you. She used her body to control my son." Daniel's response was cold enough to chill the air. "You weren't here, Victoria. You never were." Frederick's voice followed, smug and too confident. "We're here for the results. The DNA test will prove the truth." Hannah's breath caught. "DNA test," she whispered. Before she could move, Daniel appeared at the bottom of the stairs and saw her. His expression softened instantly, but behind it, worry, fear, determination. "Hannah," he called gently, "stay upstairs with Sam." But Victoria pushed past him, eyes blazing with triumph. No, let her hear it. She deserves to. Dr. Marcus Hill stepped forward next, holding an envelope. Hannah's stomach twisted painfully. She didn't understand what was happening, why a DNA test mattered, what Victoria was trying to prove, but the dread crawling up her spine refused to leave. Dr. Hill cleared his throat. Mrs. Hale insisted on a private test to confirm that Mr. Carter is Samuel's father. And he isn't, Victoria snapped. Tell them, Marcus. Daniel clenched his fist. This is ridiculous. No, Frederick said, smirking. It's justice. Dr. Hill opened the envelope. The house fell silent. Then he spoke. Daniel, you are not Samuel's biological father. Hannah felt the world tilt. Daniel closed his eyes a single slow breath, leaving him as if he had expected this, feared it, but had already made peace with the truth. Victoria's triumphant smile widened. There, it's over. She can stop playing mother now. But Dr. Hill wasn't finished. He cleared his throat again. There was an anomaly in Samuel's DNA, a mutation marker. Daniel frowned. Meaning what? I ran comparative markers through hospital records from surrounding clinics, just to verify the chain of custody. Victoria laughed cruelly. You see, even science knows she's a liar, but Dr. Hill cut her off. The mutation matched only one person in our entire database. He looked up, directly at Hannah. Hannah Brooks. The room froze. For a moment, nobody breathed. What are you saying? Hannah whispered, her knees threatening to give out. Dr. Hill's voice softened. Hannah, Samuel is your biological son. Her vision blurred. She clutched the banister with one hand, Sam with the other. No, that can't be. My baby died months ago. They told me he died. Dr. Hill stepped closer gently. There was a mix-up at St. Mary's Medical Center. 2 infants admitted within minutes of each other. One passed, one lived. The tags were switched during transport. Hannah's sob cracked through the silence. My baby is alive. Yes, Dr. Hill whispered. He's been alive all along. And he's the child you've been saving. Hannah collapsed into tears, holding Sam against her chest, his tiny body fitting perfectly into the space where her grief had lived for months. Daniel moved to her, instantly kneeling beside her. Hannah, look at me. She couldn't. The world was spinning. Relief, joy, grief, disbelief, all crashing like a storm she wasn't ready for. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. He's yours. He's always been yours. But Victoria wasn't finished. This doesn't change anything, she screamed. I'm still his mother in the eyes of the law. Daniel is his legal guardian. This girl has nothing. No, Daniel said, rising slowly. She has everything. She has the truth. Victoria's voice cracked. You would give up. Your son Daniel looked at Hannah, really looked at her, and something warm, steady, and unbreakable passed between them. I'm not giving him up, he said, because he's not mine to give. He belongs with his mother. Frederick scoffed. You're making a mistake. Daniel turned to him with eyes sharp as ice. Get out of my house, both of you. Now. Victoria shook with rage, but for once had no words. She stormed out past the staff, past the marble columns, past the life she had pretended to care about, but never truly loved. When silence finally returned, Daniel knelt again beside Hannah. Sam stirred sleepily in her arms, unaware that his entire world had just been rewritten. Hannah, Daniel whispered, you're not alone. Not now. Not ever again. She finally lifted her eyes to his, and this time she didn't look away. They stayed like that for a long moment, mother and son finally reunited, and the man who had fought for both of them standing right by their side. Weeks passed. Lawyers drew up corrected custody papers. Jason Miller, Sam's biological father, attempted to demand money in exchange for relinquishing rights, but Daniel shut that down with a legal team so formidable Jason signed away everything within hours. And through it all, Hannah stayed at the Carter estate, but not as staff, as family. Months later, she and Daniel married quietly in the back garden under soft string lights with Sam in her arms and Allison clinging to her dress. Their new daughter Emma would come a year later, another gift born not from tragedy, but from healing. Hannah often said she lost one life only to find another waiting for her in a place she never expected. And Daniel always answered the same way. No, you didn't find it. You saved it. The truth was they saved each other, and they never forgot it. Before we close this chapter, I want to ask you something. Do you think Hannah and Daniel deserve this ending, yes or no? And did the truth about baby Sam surprise you the way it surprised them? If this story touched your heart, comment the number 100 so I know you felt something too. And before you go, tell me what country you're watching from and share this video so more people can experience stories like this.